Hotep, this is Councilman Kwame Kenyatta with another Uncensored, Uncut right here on Channel 22, your council cable station temporarily. we know some things are happening in the city. And first of all, let me just thank you. From my understanding, you have been watching and requesting copies of the part one, that we're going to call it now, Uncensored and Uncut, and this is part two, as we take a look at some of the issues and great issues and concerns to you and our community at this particular point in time in the city of Detroit. And I also want to thank you and the media division for City Council in getting this information out. As you know, as a result of the new charter and vote of council, the control of the channels will be under the mayor very soon. So who knows, you may not get this kind of uncensored, uncut, and good information that you've been getting, because it will be under the purview of the mayor. And of course, another issue is that if an emergency manager come in, will it then be under the control of the emergency manager? We're not really sure. Those are some things that we must deal with. Also, let me thank those of you who have been calling and sending emails concerned about my whereabouts and my health. I am on medical, working from home here with my staff and staying in contact, not at the table. I got a very bad infection. There's a lot of viruses going on and a number of things going on, and as a result of some issues, I ended up in the hospital with a very bad infection. Been on antibiotics and just finished that up, and so now just trying to get my strength back and get back into the thick of things. So we'll be back. If there's a seat left, we'll be back. And I say that lightly, but at the same time, I say it very heartedly as it relates to what we're addressing. As you know, within the last week and a half, the financial review team has come out with their findings, with their report, and I'm sure we all was just floored by it, right? We didn't expect it. We didn't know they were going to say we were in an emergency. I mean, rocket scientists, right? Of course we're in an emergency, in a crisis, a financial crisis. America is in a financial crisis. The Western world is in a crisis, in a financial crisis, and they go from one crisis to the next. In fact, a few months ago, they were talking about going over the cliff. Now they're talking about sequester. They're talking about automatic spending cuts and what's that's going to mean to the states and the cities and the federal government as a whole. You're talking about trillions of dollars in debt. America is a debtor nation, having to borrow money from China and various other places. Oh, did I say borrow money and get further into debt? Yes, that's what America is doing. That's what Spain is doing. That's what a number of other countries and states are doing. But Detroit is not supposed to follow the standard of economic lending, and borrowing in order to fix their finances, since the state hasn't been able to do it, or the federal government has not developed a urban agenda that allow the states and the cities to get back on their feet and to revive themselves from this recession and depression that this country has been in for the last few years or so. So now we're all holding our breath, waiting for the governor to decide whether or not he is going to appoint a financial manager or an emergency manager. Ultimately, come March 28th, that person will become an emergency manager for the city of Detroit and do for the city of Detroit what Detroit has not been able to do for itself, and what the state and the country and many other states, you got states that have gone into bankruptcy in this country, and others are headed towards bankruptcy in this country because of the inability to get to where they need to get to. It's not a Detroit problem per se, although Detroit is symptomatic of the overall problem that exists. So they have issued their report. And their report, in many cases, is based upon the people who they made us hire. Some of the financial consultants that we have had to hire, and they have come in and said, "Oh, they have some financial problems, y'all, and they can't handle it. And because they can't handle it, then maybe we need to have somebody else to come in here, even though we haven't had any major success of this magnitude." Don't talk to me about Ben Harbor. Don't talk to me about Ecorse and Flint and Pontiac. These are smaller cities with smaller deficits. $2 million deficit, $5 million deficit, $10 million deficit, Allen Park, and all of these places, and where emergency managers have gone in after emergency manager after emergency manager. Detroit Public School, which, by the way, did not have a deficit when they were taken over. They had a $93 million surplus, but because somebody wanted control of the bond money, there was an effort, successful effort, to take over the public school system, and you have had financial manager after financial manager there for almost 10 years now. So this is what you get with financial managers. They will come in and they will look at your assets and they will say, well, you can't manage this any longer and you can't manage that any longer. So we're going to sell this off. We're going to privatize DPW. We're going to privatize the lighting department, which has already been voluntarily privatized. We're going to privatize the parking department. We're going to privatize the health department. They did that on their own, like Carter G. Woodson say, when you get a Negro who don't understand his identity, purpose, and direction and been enslaved for 500 years, you don't have to tell them to go to the back door. They'll go to the back door on their own. And if there is no back door, they will demand one. They will make one. So we went to the back door to get rid of our health department, which could, in fact, make money for you if you knew how to manage it in a manner where it would bring revenue in from all of the various other counties and cities who need the type of services that the health department could provide. Same thing with the human services department. We went to the back door on that one. Boss, can you please come in? We can't handle this. We can't do this anymore. Can you take this away from us and y'all do it? And so they said, well, y'all got some issues there. You got some problems there. And you say, well, we can't resolve those issues and problems. Here, you handle it. And so what makes you think that they won't come in with a financial? You didn't gave them everything else. Why wouldn't they come in? And they thought you were going to give them bailout. But because of the voice of the people and standing up and saying, no, don't do that, and changing the hearts of some of the council members, they didn't get that. And they really pissed off about that. They really upset about that. And so they said, well, look, we're going to put the money in the budget anyway because we're going to get it. If they won't give it to us, we thought we had them, they won't give it to us, then we'll just take the whole thing and then we'll give it to ourselves. That is what this is about. So what I want to talk about in the short time that I have here today, I want to talk about plantation politics. Plantation politics on a number of different levels. Now, I read the blogs, and I'm sure I'll get some more hate mail from the guy out there in St. Clair Shores who sent me a postcard talking about how I should be beaten up and physically harmed, and how he was a Marine veteran and all of that. And you know, we know where he stayed, we got his picture, we know who he is, and I'm not concerned about folks' threats. Man, don't bother me. I'm trying to make sure my health stay, and all of these other elements and unnatural stuff. But I do not fear man. I'm not worried. You can't get out of life alive. So I'm not worried about any physical harms or threats to me because of something I say or do at the table. I'm not really concerned about that. But I do read the blogs and I do read your comments under articles about Detroit. And this city, not this city, the people around this city are so gut bucket racist. I mean, when you read the comments, any day, you can choose any day, just read the comments about what they say about Detroit. They really saying it about black folks in Detroit and how they relate to this city. And so, and of course, the president in the country. This man had been talked about like a dirty dog, a monkey, a gorilla, and everything that imaginable, and the threats that he's received, not because they think that he's doing the right thing or not doing the right thing, not because he's a Democrat, but because he's a black man, even though he's mixed. They choose the other side of the mixture, the black side, and attack him. And so you have the same thing happening here. But that's all right. What the concern I have is the plantation politics, the house slave, house Negro type politics that Brother Malcolm talked about on the plantation. He said there were two types of slave. There was that house slave and there was the field slave. And the house slave, he was the one when the house caught on fire, he prayed to save the master quicker than the master was trying to save himself. If the master got sick, he said, "What's the matter, boss? We sick? We sick." That was that house slave. He felt that he had an invested interest. And so you see that kind of politics now, where folks say, well, we've had it. We've had it for so long, and we ain't done nothing with it. How long have you really had it? Coleman Young was in office for 20 years, so maybe 50, 55, 60 years. But the city and the state has been here for hundreds of years, and it's been going in a certain direction. I'm not going to go over that because I did that in part one. You can go back and check out part one, where I kind of talked about the population drain on the city of Detroit and previous mayors and all of that. I talked about that. But that is the reality. So, but some of you who are saying, don't believe, okay, because you've had a couple of mayors, a few mayors, and council members who have not done the best that they could do, who have not done a good job, you don't think that, well, because they haven't done a good job, then we'll go find somebody else who can do a better job. You say, well, I think we need a white mayor, a white city council, and more white folks in the city of Detroit to make this a better place. You're the only people walking around saying that. They're not saying that in Allen Park. They're not saying that in some of the other cities and states around the country when white folks mess up, when white mayors mess up and white city council members mess up, they vote them out and get somebody else in. That's what they do. And that's what intelligent people do. Nobody gives up power who has power to somebody else who they had to take power from in the first place. You just don't do that. But when you have a plantation mentality and a plantation reality, then you get plantation results. And that's pretty much where we are. So some of you all are begging, praying, hoping for a financial manager, an emergency manager. They haven't done nothing with it. Take it from them. I just want my garbage picked up. I just want my lights on. You live out in Southfield and ain't got no lights. No sidewalks. I'm not hating on Southfield. Don't give me no call, Southfield. I got family members live in Southfield. I'm just saying, there's no lights in many places and no sidewalks. You walk in the street. People get hit out there at night. But you still got other kind of services. Police come when you want them to come. EMS come when you want them to come. And all of those things. So yes, you deserve the right to have good services. You deserve the right to have the police to come while the criminal is still in the house, breaking in the house. These guys have gotten so bad, and they know that we're so bogged down and so overwhelmed, they will break in your house, fix them dinner after they've had lunch, get full, take a nap, and then get up and leave. That's how bodacious we have come in understanding that they know that everything has broken down in the city. Having said all of that, yes, I'm not stupid. I know these things have broken down. And we have fought for better services at the table. But we don't control the flow of daily services as city councilmen. We don't. The mayor controls that. All we do is try to make sure that the resources is there, or try to get the resources there. And when we can, we do, and when we can't, we just can't. But whoever is in charge of the day-to-day operation, they're responsible for making sure that you got vehicles on the street, that you got vehicles that are painted. I've seen police cars where the paint is down to the metal. Just get the car painted. Why get it painted? Well, I just want the car to come. But you also want the officer to have a sense of pride. You also want the officer to feel good about the uniform that he or she wears and the car that he or she drives in as they go about trying to protect the citizens in the city. It boosts the morale. It is a leadership problem. It is a management problem. So we have these finances, these trumped up finances. I'm not saying that we don't have financial difficulty and we're not in a financial crisis, as I said before. So is America. So treat us all the same. But when you look at this thing, they talk about legacy debt. Over years, stuff that's not even due and won't be due for 30 years. They're talking about 12 billion, 13 billion. And some of it is not even ours. They include the water department. Well, the judge said that the water department is a separate entity from the city of Detroit. They have their own human resources. They have their own law department. They make their own decisions now. Those decisions don't come to the city of Detroit. And they're not part of the general fund. So the bond obligation that comes to the water department, it belongs to the water department and is not on the books for the general fund. So why are you calling that a legacy debt for the city of Detroit? Because you think we are stupid? Because you think we're dumb? You think we're not intelligent? We cannot read? We cannot articulate? We cannot understand where the numbers are. That's what they're saying to you. And so we'll say, oh, wow, look how big the debt is. Look how big the U.S. debt is. Trillions. Not millions. Trillions. Not billions. Trillions. Trillions. So now, yes, we have over 800 million, according to Mr. Dillon and his people, in count receivables that's owed to the city of Detroit for one reason or another, whether it's revenue sharing or other monies that are owed to the city that we have not gotten. We have over 200 million that's in fees and fines that are owed to the court system. 100 million of that is supposed to come back to the city of Detroit. So yes, there are monies that are owed, but you have had the inability based upon leadership and management to get the right people in place to collect. People keep telling us how much is owed to us. You just hired a company, paid them $14 million to come back and tell you how much money folks owe you. What kind of stupidity is this? You know how much is owed you. How do we go about it? If the state really wants to be a partner, then let's sit down and say, okay, we got the numbers. We know that $270 million is owed to 36th District Court. 100 million of that is owed to the city of Detroit. Property taxes and income taxes is another 200 million. And I understand what you all are saying. You're saying, hey, I can't get my services, I can't pay my taxes. And give me my services, turn my lights on, fix my streets, pick up my garbage, and then you'll get your taxes. I understand that. At the same time, that's money that's owed to the system, is owed to the city. So we're talking almost $1 billion right there when we look at it. We ain't even talked about the Illegers and other companies and what they owe. They've been getting off like a fat rat. Filming Red Wing games and all of that kind of stuff, and based on the contract, they're supposed to pay the city of Detroit portions of the proceeds to the tune now of about $75 million or so. Never got it. Never got it. Other taxes that are owed to the city of Detroit. So Detroit has a problem. It has a collection problem. It has a management problem. And those are problems that you need to resolve, and you don't need a financial manager to resolve. This is an election year. So if we're serious about democracy, and I, again, pick up part 2. I broke down democracy in a Republican form of government, a republic, and what indirect and direct rule is in democracy. I'm not going to go through that in this particular section. But if you're concerned about democracy, and people voted for their elected officials, whether you like us or not, whether I like us or not, you put us there. And it is your responsibility to hold us accountable or remove us from office. And this is your opportunity to do it. This is an election year. So you get to do what you're supposed to do, research the candidates, look at who has done their job, how they've done it, how they voted, how they didn't vote. And then you look at the people who are running for the office, and you say, okay, well, who's qualified? Who's qualified to do this job? Let me check out their history. Let me see what they've done before. And let me see how they've done it before. And let me see if they're coming to, now you got district, so now you can hold these people accountable for your district. Let's do that. But don't tell me you're going to put somebody from New York, California, Washington, D.C., in control of the city of Detroit. Well, I guess they say, well, you got somebody from Franklin. Now you're talking about somebody from Livonia. And so maybe you'll go with somebody from D.C. I don't know. People judge you on the basis of your past practices and your past actions. And so we've shown folks that we really don't care. Just move in town. Be a carpetbagger. Move in town. And if the law had not changed, then folks would have moved in last week and say, well, hey, I'm running for mayor, but the law changed, so you had to at least be here a year. So they moved in last year over in Sherwood Forest, and now they say, well, look, I know you black folks, and I have an understanding, and I have a track record. I know how to deal with layers of government when I'm on a plantation. I know who my overseers and my crackers should be. And when I say crackers, I mean the guy who cracked the whip. That's what they called him. They called him a cracker because he had the whip and he cracked that whip. And he wasn't always white. He was some of those crackers was black. And so that is the kind of level of plantation politics that is going on in the city of Detroit. Sit down with us and say, let's get a team together to go after the monies that are there, the monies that is owed to the city of Detroit. And then let us also sit down with the unions who were willing to make concessions to the tune of $100 million+. How do you stare $100 million in the face when you say you got a financial problem and say, I don't want to deal with that? Now, it's been a year. We're coming up on April. That's been a year ago. And they have made no more progresses by not approving those union contracts. Had they approved those union contracts, you at least would have had over $100 million in concession. Here we are a year later, and you're talking about an emergency manager. What kind of stupidity is that? What kind of backwards leadership is that? And it was the governor himself, and Andy Dillon, who said to this mayor, don't approve those contracts, those negotiated contracts. Don't send them to council. And he said, "Yassa, boss, I won't send them because we gotta prevent an emergency manager from coming in here." And here you are a year later, still trembling and shaking, talking about they got a gun to your head. Well, at some point, maybe they should just pull the trigger and blow your brains out. If that's all you're gonna do is what you've done, then maybe there's nothing that's gonna harm you, because maybe there's nothing between the ears in the first place. We have a very bad situation in the city of Detroit, and the people are suffering. Report after report after report is coming out while we're fighting over the budget and deficit. We got a real deficit in our community. Crime at an all-time high. Not as bad as it is in Chicago. They're killing people every day in Chicago. Every day. Roman gangs members is on the wild in Chicago. But yet, we're coming up close in Detroit as well. Triple shootings here. Double homicide over there. Rapes and people being left in abandoned homes. And the only thing the mayor can get on television and do a press conference on how mad he is about not being able to give Belle Isle away. I'm going to get with Pulte and we're going to tear down some abandoned houses. I thought I remembered that name, Pulte. I think they were involved in Graymart. I think they were involved in some other deals in Highland Park and various other places as well. And you know, fine. If they're going to do this free of charge and tear down all these houses free of charge, then good. I'm happy. I welcome it. But I don't think that's the case. I think they've set up a nonprofit, which anybody would do if they knew they were going to get paid, and get HUD money and government money to go into the nonprofit and be able to do it for $5 million versus $7 million. Most companies would have went for that sweetheart deal as well. So it's not that they're not going to get paid. They're going to get paid for the volume. They're going to get paid for the volume. And they're going to get paid into the nonprofit. But nobody cares about that. Let's just get these houses down, and that'll be my legacy. I got 10,000 houses down before I got out of office. At the same time, over 20,000 homeless people in the streets in the city of Detroit. 3 out of every 5 children in the city of Detroit go to bed in poverty and hungry in this city. Now they tell us, we already knew it, that there's a direct correlation between lead poisoning and the test scores that children in Detroit are getting. So the reason their MEP scores and their MAP scores are down and low because of environmental racism. Oh, are you surprised? And the reason that so many of them are going to jail is because they are affected mentally by the environmental racism that exists in this country in terms of the lead poisoning in the homes that still exist, not just the homes. See, I think we're missing the point. Lead is also in the soil. This city had over 15 smelters, 15 battery companies and others that emitted lead into the air, and that lead came back down and settled on the ground, and lead does not dissipate. And so it is still there, and the children are still playing in it. And when they tear down these lead infested, asbestos infested homes, and then they dig a hole and they cover up the wood and everything in the ground, and the kids come and play and the rain comes in, then they still getting the lead. So don't just tell me what the results of your study is. Tell me what you're going to do about that study. Tell me how you're going to make the people whole. You spend $30,000 on the front end to imprison an individual, but in Detroit, you only pay $7,000 to educate that individual, even though he or she come to school from a disadvantage, because not only do they live in poverty, not only do they live in a racist environment, they also live in an environmental racist environment, and so they come disadvantaged from the very beginning, and nobody's addressing that. While we're fighting over this budget thing, there are so many other issues, and so we need people who are concerned about the level of human quality of our community and of our people. I heard the governor, let me try to close this down. I heard the governor talk about, he had all of his charts and everything, you know, howdy doody kind of stuff. He had all of that together. And he said, we got to grow Detroit. We got to grow Detroit. And these are the things that have been happening. And we can't get this done like this. And we need a win-win situation. You know, how many times have we talked about growing the city while the mayor talked about shrinking the city? How do you shrink a city this big? You don't shrink a city this big. You grow the city. How do you grow the city? You don't grow the city by giving away all the land to everybody for so-called for farms and all of that. You think this man just tearing down houses? This man build houses. How stupid are we supposed to be? You think this man just tearing down houses and not coming back on the back end and saying, okay, what you gonna do with this land or these houses we just tore down? Can we make some arrangement here? It's just empty land. You can't maintain it. Why don't you just give me all of this for some of the work that I'm doing? You know, I'll pay a little bit for it. And then, where is it? Eastern Market area, around schools. So now all of a sudden, a few years from now, gated neighborhoods pop up. Oh! And then people move into those gated neighborhoods, growing Detroit. I mean, I'm not mad at them. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good strategy. Talk to the mayor about that. Talked about you take areas like Victoria Park, Gray Haven, and Shore Point, and you in the areas around that, and then you build up the neighborhood, not mothballs the neighborhood. Let's build up those neighborhoods. That's what you did with New Center area. That's what you did with Midtown. That's what you're doing with downtown. You didn't mothball those areas. You're building those areas up. You're expanding those areas, and you're putting protection in those areas. You got the university police. You got the health center police, Henry Ford police, DMC police. Then you got the Rio police. Then you got the police authority. Then you got the DPS police. So in those areas, people feel safe. But in the outer community, you can't get a call. You can't get a fire truck. You can't get an EMS truck. You can't get a police car. Garbage man coming at 1 o'clock at night, waking you up when you got to be at work at 4 a.m. because they've laid off so many people and they're working around the clock to try to get your garbage picked up. It's management, folks. I said that in part one. It is about management. Now let me just say, do I believe there's going to be a financial manager. Probably before this tape even hits the air. Probably before this tape hits the air, there will be a financial manager. It's just a question of who and when. What are the options from their perspective? A modified consent agreement? You've had a consent agreement for a year, and they've come back and they've said you have no plan and you can't get it done, and you're still in a financial emergency and a financial crisis. Nevertheless, they say that the city has masked the problem by borrowing money and covering their debt. That's what they've said. Now, when they approved this this consent agreement last year, April, they allowed the city to do what? Borrow money. You can't borrow money unless we tell you can borrow money. And then we'll tell you how to spend the money that you borrow. You can't, you've been kicking the can down the road. That's what the governor said. But what did they do last year? They allowed you to kick the can down the road, but they told you what foot to kick it with. And that's all right. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about plantation politics. So more than likely there will be a financial manager, but it won't be easy. It's not going to be an easy win. This has not been Harvard. This is not Flint. This is not Pontiac. This is not Allen Park. This is the largest city in the state of Michigan. And we have a multiplicity of issues and problems. And we have a community that's on the brink of erupting because of all the things that are going on. People are at the breaking point for a number of different reasons. For a number of different reasons, because of the crime, because of the poverty, because of the inability to advance. All of these things are happening in our city. And while we're busy fighting over, I mean, you even got people lobbying to be the EM on the plantation. You got folks lobbying to be the head in charge. They got letter writing campaigns. Choose me, boss. They know me, and I know them. And better that they have me than they have you. And so I can do a better job than the folks who were elected to be there. You got that going on. You got us so divided. You got 4 or 5 folks running for mayor. And you got one guy who said, well, hey, I'm a Detroiter. I was born in Detroit on Stratmore or wherever he said he was born at. They lived here in all those years, but he worked here. And he been over plantation politics in the city for a long time. And he said, well, you know, I've sold some stuff, so I know what to do. I know how to get the books ready. I know how to get the books right. People forget that when the McNamara machine rolled out of office, they were under federal investigation. They forget that. And when folks came to talk to us about the sale of the DMC behind closed doors, they say, if we can't get this done, the DMC is going under. That's what they said to us, if they be honest about it. That's what they said to us. It will not survive. This sale is necessary in order for the DNC to survive. So, which meant that you didn't fix it, you sold it. You sold it. But y'all say it's the fix-it man. And Reverend Hollis said in his prayer, he quoted Martin Luther King, let's judge the man not by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. Plantation preachers. And so we have all of this going on. And so what do our children see? In the midst of all of this, you got a black guy who's been able to ascend to presidency because he had the ability to be there. But what are we saying to those same young black men and young black women in Detroit? There's not one amongst you who is qualified. There's not one amongst you who can be mayor of this city and do the right thing who look like you. We got to go outside and get somebody else who just came inside to do the job for you. And so those same children who are lead infested, those same children that are not making the grade, those same children that go to bed hungry and live in poverty, what are you showing them and what are you telling them? That you can't do it because you're a criminal, you're on trial, because you couldn't even run your business right, much less the city right. You can't do it. That's basically what we're telling them. And because those 2 or 3 couldn't do it, doesn't mean that somebody else is not capable and qualified. This issue of race is a non-issue for us. Let me be clear about that. Black folks have always, we'll die to vote for some white folks. But that's always been our issue. We want to show that we don't have a racist bone in our body. And pretty much, at some point we have to talk about what racism is, because racism is not about prejudice. I'm not going to do that today. Racism is about power. Racism is about power, and we'll talk about that at another time. But how do you think Miriam Mahaffey was president of city council all that time? Because black folks voted for her. So the issue of us voting for a white person, that's not an issue. This is the first all-black council you've ever had. So black folks voted for white folks on council. Sheila Cockrell and others. Eva Hart and others. We've always done that. Look at your senators. Stabenow. Black folks vote for them. Levin. Black folks vote for them. So the issue of black folks voting for whites, that's a non-issue. We've always done that. That's not the issue. And we didn't frame this discussion. This discussion came from the media. Can a white man be mayor of a black city? We didn't frame that discussion. We didn't play that race card. They played that race card. We've always, when it comes to other folks, now we may have done it just because they were white. That's another discussion. We may have done it just because they were white. We voted for them. But when it comes to us, I think we do have to scrutinize more. We do have to base our vote on quality and responsibility and accountability, not because that's a black name, No, I'm not telling you to do that. I'm telling you that there are black folks who are qualified to lead this city into the future, and you don't just have to go vote for somebody because he's a white guy. And I know you're going to say that's not why you're voting for him. You're voting for him because he's the right guy. Right. We got some serious problems, brothers and sisters. And we have to address those. One of the questions that people have been calling the office, and one reporter called the office and asked, will you serve under an emergency manager? Let me answer the question for you. I was not elected to serve an emergency manager. I was elected to serve you. I was elected by you, not once, but twice. And so that's who I'm here to serve. That's your answer. I was not elected to serve an emergency manager. And as you know, I'm not running again anyway, so it may be an early retirement. But I was not elected to serve an overseer, to serve someone who is brought in, who will sell off, who will privatize, and who will minimize your elected officials. I was not elected to serve under that type of government. Based on our charter, it's based on check and balance. Based on the emergency management law, there is no check and balance coming from the local government. You cannot check, nor can you balance that emergency manager once he or she is in office. You have no more control. And if you get in the way, they have the power to eliminate you. So, interesting that they talked about the charter was an impediment to progress in the city of Detroit. Crystal Crennington in her piece in Free Detroit, where she talks about the Financial Advisory Board report, she's very clear and she's very correct when she says that the governor, the Attorney General, the state of Michigan, approved the charter before it was put on the ballot to be elected by the people. You hear what I'm saying? They approved it. Even the part in there about the Corporation Council having the power to sue. They approved that. And we were going through all the stuff because the charter was just voted in last year, y'all. November of last year. Went into effect January of this year. The governor looked at it. They made some corrections. But all the stuff that they're saying the charter won't allow you to do, they approved it. They approved it. And then they sent it back for it to go on the ballot for the people to approve. You can call it scapegoating. You can call it whatever you want. It's fact. So don't blame the charter and the people of the city of Detroit when the Constitution of the state of Michigan give that responsibility to you, and either you chose not to review the charter thoroughly or you chose to overlook that so then you could come back and use it against the people of the city of Detroit. So let me just close up. I know I've gone over my time. I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Hopefully I've shared my thoughts and they're clear and understandable. Detroit is a great city. It's going to be a great city. I'm not sure what the role of black folks are going to be in the city of Detroit. Dr. Claude Anderson talked about a permanent underclass. And I think that we are headed to that position because no one is going to save you for yourself but yourself. And so when we see the statistics as it relates to the illiteracy in the city of Detroit, the poverty in the city of Detroit, the health and the crime in the city of Detroit, it affects 90% of the African American community in the city of Detroit. We cannot look for a white hope or black hope, not in terms of a mayor's office. We can only look to ourselves. Each one have to teach one, each one have to reach one, and we have to do better about how we are living in our community. Just because we're having hard times, we've always had hard times in America. That's what America has meant for black folks, hard times. We came to this country enslaved for 400 years in this country and then set free, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, and still going through discrimination, folks standing up at hockey games with Ku Klux Klan uniforms on and all kinds of, you got Ted Nugent running around talking about if Obama was elected, then he would either be dead or in prison. Last time I checked, I ain't seen his obituary, and he's not in prison. He getting ready to run around and do a concert called Black Power 2013, making mockery of you and your condition and your situation. So it is incumbent upon us to take an inner look at ourselves an inner look at ourselves and our condition and our situation and look at improving that situation, that condition, no matter who's in the state house, the city house, or the White House. The real issue is what about my house and how I can improve that. Once again, thank you. This is Councilman Kwame Kenyatta. You're watching Channel 22. And hopefully we'll still be here to continue to provide you with good information and articulate some of the things that are going on and analyze some of the things that are going on. I don't want to make an analysis of paralysis. I don't want you to be paralyzed. I want you to be mobilized. And I want you to be active into changing the conditions and to empower the vision. Thank you very much.